Are you up and going? Okay. Anybody here about Jeff? Is he planning to be here? He has. We thought so. Okay, so he might just come in a little bit late. All right, I guess we'll go ahead and start. Welcome to all our district people who are here. My gosh, it's fun to see all of you guys.
This is
Why did you choose this
intimidating,
side of
let
the
me
room?
tell you.
Kind of intimidating, but how come some of you didn't sit over here? It's sort of like the wedding. Gotcha. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and begin with roll call. We have Dale Hansen, Business Administrator, Terry Rhodes, Board Member, Jeff Nielsen, Board Member, who I think will be coming, Alan Gruding, Board Member. I'm Kathy Christiansen, Board Member, Roger Pulsifer, Board Member, Steve Norton, Superintendent, Randall Bagley, Board Member, and Larry Gibson, Board Member. And we'll go ahead and begin with the pledge and our mission statement. And I forgot to ask you, Dale, will you lead us in this? We've never had you do it before. Can you type and do this at the same time?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you like me to receive?
Yeah, would you go ahead and? Oh, yeah, where is it? Oh,
It's right here. You got it? Great. The board mission statement is, our mission is to educate students for success in a changing world.
okay, thank you. All right, is there anyone here for public input? Guess not. I thought there would be. Okay, and hopefully everyone has looked over the items on the consent agenda. Any problems with anything on it? Okay, then I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second,
Any discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote electronically.
Who made the second? I apologize. Who seconded?
Alan,
Roger made this motion.
Roger made the
Right.
motion, Alan made.
do you want me to slow down? I don't know why I'm in such a hurry.
Okay, you want to do it online?
Yeah. Now that we've all figured out how to do it.
Okay, all in, voting's unanimous.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, we'll move to the action agenda, and we do have a request for the approval of South Cache Middle School Land Trust Amendment by Principal Blair Powell. Oh, by Mike Lichty.
Back to school night, or some event going on at his school, and he asked if I would just cover this for him. Last board meeting, he requested to transfer some funds, reallocate funds, so he had those funds available for teacher training that's coming up, PLC in the Salt Lake area. So we're asking for your approval to reallocate those funds for
Okay.
South Cache.
Any questions on this? If you haven't had a chance to read the documents, then we have till next meeting, right?
No, we
No,
need to
that was
vote
the-
today.
Oh, that's
We
right,
did
it's an
last
action
week.
agenda. Oh, I missed out on that. Okay, any questions? All right, I'll take a motion then to approve the South Cache Middle School Land Trust Amendment.
I move that we approve the request for the South Cache Middle School School Land Trust Amendment.
second,
Okay, any discussion? Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
This is the exciting part, is to wait for the vote, right?
suspense.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Then we'll also have Mike introduce the request for the approval of the facilities permit and use policy.
Okay, so I'm going to drop the screen and put this up on the camera because there's been a few changes since we talked last time. And we'll just review those and then we'll ask for your approval. Waiting for the projectors is as exciting as waiting for the vote. First of all, thank you for those. There were some who sent some input in, and I've addressed that here in the document in yellow, some areas. And as well, I've received more input from the school principals because I asked them again to go out into some of their local communities and particularly about the rental rates to see, validate again if we were close to expectations and what even some cities were charging to use some facilities. So there'll be a few changes in that as well. But on the very first page on the actual policy, and this is Terry brought these up in yellow. This is one statement that we had left out, and you know, I was not aware of this, but it's an interesting statement. The organizer of an event may not use a civic center unless the organizer resides within the geographical boundaries of the school district. You know, that would limit quite a few, probably groups, but that's right in the law. And so
I have a
that was
question on-
added.
I have a question on that, Mike, because our class reunion is using Skyview,
Mhm.
but the organizer doesn't live in the boundaries, but a lot of the rest of us do, so,
But under one of the categories, it talks about school reunions, and that's
Okay.
allowed within the policy with that one.
okay.
Down on this section right here, special function officer, there was a outdated code, so we updated the Utah code. And then we had to go down on the prohibition of smoking and possession of alcohol. That code was outdated. This is the correct code, and if you wanted to look that up. Terry brought this one up as well, and Alan today helped research that out with Bear River Health Department because it took to dig in and find out where that actually was at, that policy where it says tobacco can't be used in or on the property of any public school, elementary or secondary. And then they amended it in 2006 to where charter schools and private schools were also included in that. Another change, changing the word to hyphenate for-profit. Before it was just for-profit without a hyphen. So that's been changed within the policy. Another change in it right there. Then we get into this is where I received probably a little more input that I wanted from our school administrators on the distribution of rental funds. We had a different value there last time when we talked to the board. Last time we talked, the split on this facility right here was it 60-40? Yeah, 60-40, and this was 50-50. The schools didn't like that. This is what they suggested. They actually suggested even a little bit higher split in their favor than what's here. We kind of negotiated in between. So if there's any discussion with the board, I think it's appropriate to have that right now on these splits on revenues. Because this is one of the big changes in the policy, is there's revenue sharing where the schools will keep a certain percentage of the rental funds.
What do you base that on for the district? Why do they get 30%? Is that what it costs to pay the utilities? or-
Well, when we were looking at all the other policies around the state, many of the districts, they have them 100% stay at the school. You know, then that leaves the district paying all the utility costs and everything as well. And we felt like there needed to be a little bit of a split. Quite a few districts had a 90%, 10% split. And so we're still, even on the splits that we're recommending here, we're probably, when we compare ourselves to other districts, the ones that I looked at on a revenue share, districts getting back a little bit more than what other policies we're having now. This isn't cost neutral by any means. That means the district will have to budget more money at the district level to cover utility costs. Now, the schools do have to charge the cost for any personnel costs, those types of things, and they have to pay that out of the funds that they receive for rental to pay for any personnel costs. Okay? Go ahead.
The schools actually, there's additional funds charged if there's personnel costs in there, so that's 100% goes to pay the cost of the
Mhm.
person helping. So really,
Right.
we're just looking at utilities and overhead costs of the building. That's why I kind of question where's the school incurring the cost if they need to get 90 or 80% of the revenue.
Their argument is they have not had the money to maintain repair facilities or being rented, and they want to have those kind of funds in a budget to where they don't have to come asking us for those funds. They just have them. Now they're accountable to maintain and repair. That's their angle that they're coming from.
But then they want us to help put in new carpet in the auditorium and do the football fields and everything else.
Absolutely.
They don't want to spend their money.
But they haven't had money before this.
No, Mountain Crest's
It's
got a
all
lot.
gone
Yeah.
to the district before
Mountain
this.
Crest has a bunch of money, but
Oh,
they don't want to
well.
spend.
No, Skyview had a ton.
Well, I asked Terry Cutler where her money, how much money she had, and she said, if there's money sitting in an account somewhere, I don't know where it is.
She better show it because she has some.
Yeah. So, this is the big change in the policy is the revenue sharing. And we've talked about this for the last couple of years. Superintendent's brought it up a few times that we want to support this at the schools to where they can keep a portion of it, and they feel a little more ownership in things. And so I'm asking the board to approve this, but I'm not saying these rates are the rates that you want, because you can see the difference between what we had last time. Just take this one here. It was 50-50. Now here it's saying 70-30. 70 staying at the school and 30 to the district. So
So does the district feel like 30% is appropriate, that it'll cover the expenses?
well, if you ask Dale, he'll say no.
Well, yeah,
Okay? And we know that. We know
it won't.
it's going to cost the district more money to set aside for this. What'd you say last time, Dale? You received like 70,000 in rentals over the year? Okay. Well, you're going to reduce that.
But you also said that you felt like the principals hadn't collected money when they could have because they didn't get to keep any of it. So there is incentive now for the principals to be more landlordish with rentals. I personally think it's a great idea because then in the future, we could say, you have your money to do your maintenance, and so if you need a new football field covered, figure out how you're gonna do it, because that's your money.
Now, I want to keep the football field out of this because they will never raise enough money to replace the football field. on turf, okay? That won't happen. But it will, yeah, band uniforms, yes, different types of things. Probably
Shower
what takes
heads and
Yep,
showers,
just all kinds of things.
visiting team, locker rooms, things like
Auditorium,
that
stage
that
floor,
haven't been maintained
the
in the
microphones,
past.
all different kinds of things. They've always said, you should be helping us, district, to take care of these because we're letting the public come in and use this and we don't have any money to maintain this and they don't think it's right to take it out of their supply money or
Does-
equipment repair to do that.
Does there need to be something in here somewhere that tells them what that money would now be, they'd be expected to use it for? Like the shower heads and the chipped walls and the scuffed up floors or whatever, so they know we've got to save this money to help repair those things?
Well, that's not written in black and white here, but they know that's what it's for. If you think we need to put that statement in there, easy to do that.
What does everybody think about that?
I think it would be easier to put in some place the things that the district is going to help them.
Oh, okay.
And then the expectation is they're gonna take care of everything else. So we
I think I would like to see
I
that.
agree, because because the football fields, for instance, it was assumed that they all understood that they should be saving money to replace those football fields. And now they say, we can't do that. And new principals who weren't part of that deal say, well, we weren't part of that deal. So it's got to be written somewhere.
Yeah. But I don't know if it'd be part of the policy. That would be the procedures after we get the policy done. We
Okay.
would just say, the rental money, the district will pay for the following facilities, projects on buildings, and the rest will be left up to the money that you receive to take care of it yourself.
So where would you put that, so it could be reviewed every year with the principals? So when they get new principals, the new one knows that too.
I'll come up with a recommendation on that.
Okay. Okay.
Next meeting, we can chat about it.
Okay.
What I really need from you folks right now is, where do we want to lock in on this?
Well, one of the concerns that I have is that we've always let the public use our facilities. I mean, it's their buildings. They're the ones that voted on the bonds. They're the ones that support us and help us and pay property taxes. And I'm a little bit concerned and that we might get a little greedy here and start charging, more than some of those organizations can afford to pay. And I just want to make sure that the public has access to our facilities, because it is their facility.
Yeah,
I
and
wholeheartedly agree.
So
That's
I'm
the
just-
one- that's
I
the one.
think that's why then the new schedule that Mike created with the 5 different categories is really great.
this is where we've spent a lot of time, Alan, talking to the other public agencies to try to see if our prices were out of line or close to what we currently are. When this was initially put together, the prices, it came out of the rental prices out of Washington School District and put them in, but when we started looking at it, they were much, much higher than ours, and so
But
we've
what I'm
changed them.
concerned about is that all of a sudden now a principal has a chance to see that they can get a little extra money here. And I don't know how else to say it. Are they going to gouge the people coming in so that they get that extra money that goes to their supplies? And that's a concern that I have.
Well,
Do
they'll get
we-
this, they'll get this form, right, that tells them what they are
Yeah,
allowed to
it's
charge.
renting it's showing the facilities and the cost. But I think what Alan's referring to, you go down to personnel costs and supply costs, it's by agreement.
Oh,
And
That's what
there
I'm
could be,
Do we not trust our principals?
Well, sure we trust them. That's not an issue about trusting them. What the
Right,
issue
but
is,
they're
all of a sudden now
representing
we're
us.
saying, hey, you've got to supply and take care of all these things. And they haven't had to do that before, and they're thinking, well, how am I going to do that? I'll charge a little more. And that's my concern. And so as long as the district office can help the principals understand that, I think this is great.
In the policy, isn't it written that they have to give a report
Yes.
annually to the district office?
an annual report. Mhm.
An annual report of everything they charged, so we can review it.
But it's almost too late then. they've already charged it.
Right, but we can correct it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we see that there's an issue, it can be corrected for the next year.
That's just a concern that I have, and
Now-
I have to look to the district office to help us with that. And I'm also going to ask some principals out there that have been former principals, where do you go with this? Gary and Jeanette, where do you go with this?
You know, at the elementary, this is gonna be so minuscule, it's not gonna make a difference. It's not gonna bring in $1,200 a year for elementary.
You're to have principals who will let a teacher come with their family, use the cafeteria and the gym, and not to charge.
Will they start to charge now for that? Tim, how about high school?
No, because that would be a district employee under category 2.
But it's by agreement.
Right now, we technically should charge them. We don't have any, if we don't charge our own people, we're kind of going against policy. So this gives us some latitude to let some of our own folks use it without charging.
Tim, what about high school?
I oversaw the building rental at Skyview. The pain points for us were all the equipment, and for example, in the auditorium that doesn't necessarily have a budget to replace that equipment. We had lots of dance groups coming in and using expensive microphones, soundboards, light boards, curtains would get wear and tear on them. The stage would get wear and tear. We had theater groups coming in building sets. And so that was the biggest pain point as far as expenses that it was difficult for us to keep up with as a school.
Okay, and they would fall under category 4 and 5?
I can't see category 4.
Category 4 is-
Yes,
Nonprofit.
Nonprofit
Yes.
or commercial use?
yes.
Okay.
And that was hard to sometimes determine, which they were on that. So we were usually more liberal than anything and err on the side of accommodating. They're still our patrons that are in dance classes in groups, and so we tried to accommodate as much. We very rarely charged a commercial rate to anyone.
Okay.
So,
Okay, any other questions?
The other change on this one I need to point out is the personnel costs, this line right here, before we had up to $58. The feedback I got from the principals on that is sometimes that's not going to cover the hourly cost because sometimes it requires 2 different people there depending on the facility that they want. For example, they said if a dance group came in and they wanted the auditorium, they had to have the sound and light crew. Then there was a custodian crew that came in and cleaned up after them, and it said 58 wasn't going to cover that. But so they've all the time now charged them more than 58, and they were fine with that. But I was kind of limiting them in the policy. That's why I changed it to district-approved rates, so that they have the wiggle room there to, if it requires 2 people based on the circumstances, they can do that.
So does that mean they come to you to say, what is the approved rate?
No, it's published.
Okay,
Yeah, those rates are published.
okay. Okay, anything else, Mike?
The final form, probably the most important form, is the permit form. Now I have my papers all over the place.
It was there, it was behind you.
This form right here, this is the one that is a big change in the policy as well as that. It doesn't matter what user group you are, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If you're going to use any of our facilities, indoor or outdoor, you need to go through, use this form and actually be issued a permit. There may be no charge, but you still have to have a permit. And that grants the immunity to the school district by issuing this permit. And it also now is the school hopefully will have more idea of who's actually on their premises. Say it's amazing over a weekend, who's dropping in on those, especially those outdoor facilities. You have no idea how many people are dropping in on them. So they have to do some work to get people understanding that they have to have a permit. Even though it won't cost them anything, they still need to have a permit.
Is
Be
the Category 5 where they have to have a certificate of insurance?
Yes, Category 5 is the only one that has to show liability insurance.
Have they had to do that in the past, or is this?
In the past, all of them had to, all categories, but
Okay, so
now,
they're used to that.
only Category 5 commercial use have to show that.
Now, does this apply to, and I'm just using this as an example, but somebody that comes up to Skyview and runs on the track in the morning? Do they have to have this permit?
Well, you know, and Brittany at Ridgeline asked me that question the other day when I was out there. And the only way, I just turned around and asked her the question. Okay, if somebody comes out and they're running on your track and they break their ankle because they stepped on it wrong, are they going to come after us? I don't know that.
No, they can't. And I don't know for sure. I mean, I know for sure what the law is. We were to put up signs on all of our property, and that sign is our immunity. It tells them right from that this is, that they are liable if they step onto our facility. So they can run track, and that. The legislature's tried very diligently to help us with our policy, and like Alan was saying, public's already paid for these buildings once. Let's don't make them pay for them again. So my philosophy has always been, it's the best PR we can get is to have the people come and use our facilities, and especially if it's our kids and our parents. So the legislature, that's why we have this form now that makes it a civic center. That's the key word, allowing people to use our facilities and be under risk management for their insurance, except if they're a commercial thing, then they have to provide their own. So all of our properties, and I'd have to ask Bruce if he's got them all up, should have signs indicating that this is a public facility, public use is permitted, but the liability is yours.
Okay, now what about a cross-country team that does not stay on the school properties?
Well, then they're just covered in general, under the general liability of our district, is that our kids are covered for
Okay.
whatever they're
Yeah.
doing.
All right.
Yeah.
And does this apply to the rec center, or is that a totally different?
Well,
okay.
the rec center has two government agencies, so it's
Yeah.
covered the same.
Okay,
It depends if they're renting it through Skyview or if they're tying through the rec center,
Okay.
I think on that.
okay.
So those are the changes. The principals are, for the ones I've talked to, they like the idea of this, and we may come back to you in a year and say, boy, this didn't work. We hope not. But they think they can make this work, and it can be a positive thing for the schools. And it'll end up being a negative thing for Dale. He'll have a negative number.
Darn. Okay, thank you. All right, I will take a motion to approve the facilities permit and use policy for building rental.
I move that we approve the facilities permit and use policy.
Anyone second?
I second it.
Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Okay, all the votes are in, and it's unanimous.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I'm sure that was a lot of work, having to put all that together.
So our principal meeting's coming up in the first part of September, we'll now vote the policy within the detail
And include what the district will pay for.
and provide what's in it as well, your thoughts.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead then and move to approval of the technology acceptable use policy.
Okay, a couple things I wanted to make you aware of just before I get started on this was I've asked Jen you may have noticed she's been at the last couple of board meetings. One of the purposes of the Public Information Office was to provide board support, and one of the things, two of the reasons that she's here is one, to cover events so that we can get those published on our website. The other purpose is to monitor what goes on in the board meeting and make sure that those updates are reflected on our website on the policy. And I wanted to report that all but 2 of the policies that have been passed so far this last year are updated. We need to check with Larry on a couple of revisions on a couple of the policies, make sure we have accurate information. But all of that should be reflected, all of your actions as far as board policies on the website. So that is our official place where we have all of that. So since we last met on this policy, when you reviewed it last time, the major change is on Roman numeral number 5, which was the use of district-owned devices by staff members. And that was a request by Terry that we put that in there in response to the audit that took place. I will be honest with you on my philosophy on policy creation. Whenever you create a policy, you've got to be willing and able to police it. And sometimes you can write policies that are very difficult to police. So in this area on use of district-owned devices, we provide a lot of devices to our employees to use, and we trust them to use those devices mainly for business purposes, and to be able to produce those devices in an audit so that we can make sure that they're tagged and that we are accountable for them. But I was very specific in the language here that I don't want to police that whether somebody is using their calendar for personal purposes or business purposes. We all use devices for personal and business productivity. And so I left that language a little loose, I guess, to reflect that. So that's the major change there that we've made since last time. But I think it was good to add that in, because I think it needs to be clear that we provide those devices. We understand that they are going to be used for both personal and business purposes, but the rule of thumb should be use them for business purposes, and to produce them for audits if we need to track those devices and make sure that they're accounted for.
Okay. My experience from the past is that you really don't have to police too much, because teachers police each other quite well.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Any
On
questions?
C, on number 5, do we need to reflect most of the mobile devices like the Chromebooks and things are not going to be tagged because they're under the $500?
Correct. And those are mostly student devices, so we don't track those. We do have all of those devices tracked in the software, so we know where they're at if
Okay.
one comes up missing, but we don't tag them with a district tag.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, how you handled that.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. I'll take a motion to approve the technology acceptable use policy.
I move that we approve the technology and acceptable use policy.
I second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, let's go ahead and vote. Tim, will you leave that up there for just a second?
Sure.
So I want Joel, that's the format for all of the, did you see that? Okay, never mind.
I maybe should have mentioned this before you voted, but I did want to make you aware, in case you get questions on this, on kind of a procedural change on how we roll this policy out. In the past, all of the students and parents have been required to sign a paper copy of this policy and then return it to the school. And the school, someone at the school clerically had to take that information and enter it into PowerSchool, so we knew who'd signed the acceptable use policy and who hadn't. So the plan this time is that all that's going to be done electronically. So we have a link in PowerSchool that parents can not only review the acceptable use policy, but the media policy, the field trip policy, and they can check those off on a yearly basis. The other nice change that we're doing this year is parents will now, for the first time, have the ability to go in and change their contact and emergency contact information on their own at any time, and that's not been available. Often we would put, register kindergartners, and the parents wouldn't have another chance to change that information, even though they may have moved twice in the interim. So this will be a good opportunity each year. We also plan that the acceptable use policy will only be signed once per school that those children are in. So you sign it as a kindergartner, you don't have to re-sign it until you go to the middle school, and then re-sign it again until you go to high school. We think that's sufficient, and then we won't spend so much time shuffling papers, but we'll have a record of when they signed it. They will have the opportunity to re-sign electronically every year, and the date will just get replaced in our database if that happens. So I want to make you aware that that's happening.
Okay, thank you. Thanks to you and your committee for all of the work on that. All right, we'll move to the reports agenda. UMTSS team, data presentation, presented by Joel.
Well, thank you for the opportunity for us to come and present what we've been working on. We call this the 6th grade DIP. This is a project we've been working on for about 2 years. And
Yeah, we just need our lights on here, I think.
we could also call this the, in true education fashion, squeezing the most out of a penny. Because we started out with a little tiny UMTSS grant. The Utah Multi-Tiered Systems of Support offered a grant to Joel, who started this whole ball rolling, and it was $25,000, and it was basically like, who wants it? Some people were saying this really isn't a lot of money. We grabbed it. We said we'll take it. Because we were excited. When we first met, we were looking at what was the need, where was the need in our district where we could use it, and we identified 6th grade. We had a lot of teachers that were new to 6th grade, and we really felt like they needed support, they needed help for this new transition. We had some teachers moving from middle school to the elementary. We had a lot of teachers moving to 6th grade from other grades in the elementary. So we met with them throughout the 2 years, and we just finished up just last week doing our very last training with the 6th grade teachers. Turned out great.
So I guess a couple of the things that we wanted to highlight. We looked at SAGE proficiency. We really focused heavily on those tested subjects, but also I guess a smattering of other things like peer coaching and just the little idiosyncrasies that your secondary teacher isn't going to be used to going into the elementary school. And we were interested and really excited, I guess, to learn, especially in both math and language arts, which we hit really hard, that our South End elementary students performed better on the SAGE than our North End students did. So that's an indicator that the moving the 6th grade to the elementary model has been a good move for the kids. And I guess to kind of add to, so we started all the way back in February 1st of 2016, pulling all of those teachers in who were identified. And it was interesting, we were reflecting on this the other day. The mood in that morning was really tense. They were just really high-strung, they were very nervous, very just...
Anxious.
Yes.
Anxious. A lot of teachers didn't really know what was going to happen, how they were going to handle it.
Right. And we only lost one in that process. And when we met with them last week,
They were tired.
Yeah.
They didn't die.
No. Yes, that was kind of morbid, wasn't it?
Should I retire? Should I not? And
Yeah.
they were like,
I'm going to retire. But then at the end of it last week, you would just be, I don't know, it's wonderful, the feeling that you get in that training. Benita and I genuinely love meeting with those teachers. They're so resilient, they're so positive, they have a can-do attitude. And then I'll just paraphrase this. This is one of our teachers from Mountainside, Lori Murray. If you know Lori Murray, she's cheerleader of all the things. And she says, every training session was extremely helpful. I greatly appreciate all the resources, teaching, instruction, and educational materials that were provided. I've benefited from the reports of the South End teachers, share their experiences. My team used that discussion as a springboard for integrating 6th grade. So that was a great opportunity, and we had great attendance. So our next steps are to kind of look at those adjacent grades, primarily 7th grade, and start working on curriculum alignment articulation through the digital teaching and learning grant that we also received. So I guess, do you have questions? This second chart, I realized I didn't describe that. The solid lines are our performance at just the 6th grade level, and then the dotted lines, which you probably can't see from your vantage point, it's the state, and we're still consistently performing above the state in all subject areas.
Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the North was, 2016-17, so the North wasn't lower in science.
Well, no, and that one, do you want to speak to that, science?
You bet. So if you recall, the North End was still the science, and 6th grade, they were still at the middle school. All of 6th grade on the South End were in the elementary school. So that's why we compared North to South, to see if there was an improvement. In math and ELA, there was an improvement on the South End. South End was higher in math and language arts. The South End was higher, and we looked at that data, and our thoughts are, well, first off, 6th grade science, the South End went ahead and started teaching the new seed standards with the 6th grade, because they were new to the subject, new to 6th grade. A lot of them just said, I'm just going to start teaching the new seed standards. And so they did. The test was the old seed standards, or the old science standards. The teachers on the North End, it was still the middle school setting. They were still teaching the same standards, which were probably more aligned to the test. That's our thought as we analyze that data.
Can you tell me what the colors are? Because from here I can't
Oh,
tell.
sure. The yellow is North, the blue is South, and the green is the district average.
Okay.
And then this is English language arts, math, science.
Okay. All right.
Any other
So
questions?
you will continue this, but with the 7th grade next year?
Well, we're looking at it, depending on funding and stuff. Yeah.
Darn.
Yeah, our thoughts are that 6th grade used to be the transition year, and there was a lot of focus for 6th grade teachers to help the students adjust to the middle school life, and now that burden has been placed on 7th grade. So our thoughts were, there's a need. We feel like we might need to help our 7th grade teachers with that. We have talked with a lot of the 7th grade teachers, and they are trying to take care of that need at a school basis. So,
Okay.
So Dale and I have a question. How can the district average be higher than either the North or the South, if you're only looking at 6th grade?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
I said, this is district average.
Well, that's district average, I get that, but look at
Yeah.
math.
Yeah, look at this one.
That doesn't make sense, that the district average would be higher than both the North and the South?
And is that way?
It should be in between them.
This is the data that Robin gave me. I don't want to throw her under the bus. I'll have to go back and look at that. Now I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and the science green should be between the yellow and the blue also. It doesn't make sense that the district is higher.
It might not be the district average.
Could it be state?
Maybe, no, it's not state. We'll look into that and let you know.
Please do.
Okay.
Good observation, Terry.
Oh, that was Dale's.
Oh,
I
good
just voiced
observation,
it,
Dale.
because I'm always talking.
Dale's the number man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, thank you, Benita and Ashley. We'll go ahead and move forward with the Special Ed Idea Policy and Procedures Manual. If you want some really fun reading, go ahead and start reading this. document.
I only had one question.
Come when
Who
you can
wrote it?
stay longer.
Joel?
As they're walking out, I just wanted to say that was our team, and they met monthly, and we had supervision from the state, and Dale's helping me even today with the budget, but it's a real dedicated group, I've got to tell you. And regardless, it was a concern we had with that new transition and what we could do. I was being selfish, and I wanted that money for special ed. But when we saw the sixth grade need, the importance of the training, I shifted my alliance and went to the general ed to help them. So this is an amazing group. When we had ESL, we had our tier 2 reading people in that same group, and they'd gone through it. So I just wanted you to know that as an aside. So thank you all for studying this manual. I really appreciate you looking at it. I did get some really good suggestions. This was designed as a template from the state. And what I did was I took the template and then I put all of our Cache County thought into it of what we do here. It's generally a plan that the state would like to see approved with our portion of it, of how we do things here. So as you look through this, I apologize that I don't have acronyms stated or specified. I will correct that, and Jenda and I have already talked about how to format it a little bit differently. In fact, as I looked at the pages have changed a little bit too, and I knew that would probably confuse you because it was just 1 or 2 pages different than what it was. But basically, this policy went from 44 pages last year to 73 this year, and I apologize for that. But I have to confess that it's legal law type issues that we deal with in special ed. And so those requirements and meeting those standards is what this manual is about. I suspect and I hope that it doesn't grow to 150 pages next year. I'll go through it and make sure that I try to do and meet those format things to help you understand it a little bit better. The one thing that I like about it, though, is I think it specifies in a legal sense what we're obligated to as far as special education rules and regulations. It's helpful that the state is backing this because most districts follow this same format and we're all on the same page. The one thing that I think, and Kathy brings it up very clearly, is there a way to make it simplified? And yes, I think it's easy to do that on a 1 page. And that's something that I'll work on anyway for general ed purposes. But for our purposes, as far as policies and procedures, this is the Bible of what we follow in special education. So.
Okay, any questions about this, concerns?
Yeah. So if it's the Bible, is it written for special ed teachers?
It's written for you.
Just for school board members?
It's written in a sense for the policies and procedures that the board would approve. But what it's really, if I were to hand this to a special ed teacher, they would probably understand the bulk of it and what it is.
Well,
because this is what they're trained to do.
I understood it, but if they have a question, how do they find anything in there?
Yeah, they come to me.
Do they just know the information, so they ignore the manual and?
No, we go through this, and part of our training and part of what we do, my coordinators with me, is we go through this. And you talk about procedural safeguards or manifestation determination. Those kinds of things are the bulk of what we continue to train and in-service on. And so this is the legal portion of what we talk about. If we need or we have questions, and oftentimes we do, Terry, I'll call the state people and I'll say, I need some help on a procedure here. Help me understand this. And in some cases, I had one last year where they didn't know either. And so we've had to go back at the drawing board at the state level and try and figure this one little question out. So it's an evolving process. Humanity changes the game sometimes, and we have to adjust to that and try to adapt to it. I'm hoping that we meet the needs of all of our kids, and that's the purpose of this, but particularly those where you talk about child find. for example, finding a child who needs help but not being able to provide that service. We can't do that. And so it's simple little things like that, or an IEP meeting where you're giving the parents an opportunity to share their thoughts rather than teacher dominated. This is what we suggest, this is what we want you to do. And then the parents just look at each other and say, okay, I guess that sounds okay. But this is giving them a little more clout. And it explains this in a little more detail of what we do and how we should be doing it better.
Maybe a table of contents at the beginning would also be a good addition to that, so people could
Yeah.
find the different subjects that they're looking for. And then, Jenda, are you reformatting this? Are you the one who does that?
Yeah, Joel and I will work together to make sure it's correct.
Is there any way that Jenda can help to simplify the language in this so it's not so?
Well, I think it would be nice to simplify it, but I think it might change the meaning in some of it because it is legal. And when you've got the legal aspects of this and the rules and regulations that follow that, I don't want to change that kind of thought, if you know what I mean.
Well, it's just a suggestion from me. At page 35,
Sure.
I thought, put me on a rack and pull out my fingernails because I am being tortured here.
Yeah. But if it's going to be published on our website as part of our policy as a board, for a parent to try and find anything in this policy to know how to proceed or to help them, they would have to just defer to the teacher because I mean, you could read the whole policy and some parents could understand it. And a lot of parents, I think, could understand it if it was formatted so you could find anything in it.
One of the things that we do at every IEP is we provide the parents an opportunity to receive a pamphlet called Procedural Safeguards. And that Procedural Safeguards is about a 20-page of this. And it explains in detail, but in less technical terms, what they can do, procedural things that they should know or be given to help them with their child. And that's given at every IEP. So.
Do you have a suggestion, Terry, on how to make that clearer for, so it'd be easier? Would a table of contents help, or is something more?
I don't know. I felt the same way you did through the whole thing. Just stretch me out and pull my fingernails out because, wow, this manual is awkward. And I don't think just because the state wrote it that we have to regurgitate everything the state wrote. Because I've seen lots of their documents and they're not useful. And so if it's going to be our policy, yes, we should keep the legal in that we have to, but there are lots of just the word "thus" that could be taken out of that it would still have the same context. There are a lot of words that could be removed from that to simplify just the language so that it would be an easier read, in my opinion.
And I think I've sat in IEPs before, and I think our special ed teachers really do a good job of explaining things to the parents,
I agree.
and that's the way they're going to understand it.
Right, that's
Rather
how
than
they have
reading
to because
this.
they can't
It's hard to
find
understand
anything in
it,
this policy.
but the teachers themselves will instruct the parents.
But if we accept it as our policy, then to the parents, it looks like we're putting an awkward policy up there so that they can't understand what we're doing.
Most laws we can understand, can we?
Yeah. If you read the legislative website, most of it you can understand. It's pretty clear.
Tim?
Maybe suggest we treat this very much like we do board rules or other manuals that are produced and put it on our website as a reference. Because if you try to put it in our policy, then you've got to keep up with their writing and rewriting of this and every year, and that's going to be very difficult. I would maybe have one of our policies refer to this as, I'm not sure I'd try to reformat it, put it in
As policy.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, too. Then we could accept the manual pretty much, but we could have a policy that the public could understand. Can
And
you
the-
work on that?
And the procedural safeguards is what I was referring to, and that's what we give to parents at every IEP.
Okay, so maybe.
And it's
something like
fairly
that could be good.
straightforward. It's not to this detail, but it gives them their rights, the policies and procedures that they can follow in an IEP if they have a due process concern, the route that they can go to seek redress or to correct a situation.
Could we do that as a policy? I put that in as a policy and then a reference to this
This is,
manual?
yeah, it's all in here too, so.
Would you be willing to work on that?
Yeah.
Would everybody feel good about that? If that's used as a reference, but we do have a policy that can go in that explains the IEPs.
Sure, like we
Pretty-
talked about, the one page.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sounds great.
okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Joel. That was a
Thank
lot
you.
of work.
Thank you for your time, though, and I know, again, it's very technical and it's very precise in what it does. It's very legal when you start looking at some of this, and it can be very difficult to wade through. I like to refer back to it because I have to address it almost every day in some sense, and it's helpful for me. As far as parents looking at this, that's another question. And
And
like
teachers.
I say, it would
You
be
know what?
difficult for a parent to wade through this
Yep.
unless they really spent some time.
And for teachers to know the step by step by step.
Exactly.
It's very complicated, so.
Because general ed teachers, we're trying to help them understand this, but I think through principal support and our special ed staff at the school, that they can lend that kind of support and help them understand how to refer a student, child find, an IEP discussion, whatever.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
all right, thank you so much.
I've been trying to get a word in.
Oh, sorry, Larry.
I was just going to say, we have other policies that do that. They point to the law that has the legal jargon and such, but they state it in English and put it forward that way so that we are covered both directions.
Okay.
Very good.
So do you know how that's done? Or does somebody in here know how that's done?
The media policy that we passed, it has two specific places where it refers to the national copyright policy, for instance. Doesn't go through and explain everything, it points to it, which is adequate to protect us.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
And Joel, thanks for your work, and especially thank those teachers that they are totally amazing. And parents really do appreciate that, so thank you.
All right, so, North Park, Greenville boundary. Gary?
Spent some time last year going over boundaries on the north end to accommodate the sixth grade coming back in and with our new high schools and everything else. The document that you've got in front of you right there is part of the North Park Greenville boundary. So the yellow section on the top would be North Park. The green down below that would be Greenville. That line that goes across there, we drew in and we thought that looked good. The problem is when transportation went to do their bus routes, we found because a bus cannot turn up one of those streets and turn around and come back down, their bus stop could not be in their boundary. So transportation has asked that we change this just a little bit. That little line that goes through right here that would come down, this is the current boundary that goes across. If we could just draw the boundary down to this road and then split that road, one side of that road being North Park, the other side being Greenville, that would allow the buses, a North Park bus could stop right here and a Greenville bus could stop right there based on the direction that they were traveling, and they would both be within their boundary. It does not change. If you look at these red dots everywhere on here, the little squares, this would not move anyone to a different school boundary from what the board approved here a few months ago. All it does is allow
transportation to be within the guidelines that they have to follow. So here's another little example. They've kind of drawn it on here just to show, comes down, this would be the new boundary, come down here and go across. The old one would be this dotted line up above. I realize this would take action, and I realize that you need some time for that, but I just wanted you to be aware of it before school starts next week, and let you know that that proposal was in place. I realize we're probably a month out before we can take action on it, but it does not change anyone's current school boundary. It just allows busing to do what they need to. Any questions?
Looks good.
Oh, sorry. So geographically, the boundaries change, but it won't affect any homes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's exactly. You should have made the presentation, Randall. That was much less verbose and wordy than mine was.
Okay, thank you, Gary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are you guys back for, okay, yeah, do you want to go ahead? Correction. Okay.
Rule number 1, check your data. Rule number 2, know what you're saying before you say it's the district average.
Oh,
So we have corrected that. We want to show you the new chart. Oh. Just so that we will sleep better tonight. Not the right. Sorry. Okay, we're going to do this. Can you see that?
That's awesome.
Okay, here's the data that we were given from the Sage portal.
Well, okay, so we worked really closely with Robin Hedgecock, and she pulled the preliminary results before it was even published on Sage Portal for us. So that's why the language arts one looked accurate as far as the overall proficiency. And then I'm gonna click out of this for a second. So you can see the actual performance for math and science was reported to us as 61%, but when I went and calculated the average proficiency for all of the schools together, it was actually 53%. But if you'll see, so I'm gonna move it a little bit more. Oh, but I gotta scroll now. Let's do it. All right, so that should make a little bit more sense. And then the math, the reason that the district average is slightly lower than the south overall is because of the N size. The N size for the south end was 726 students who tested in math versus 610 who tested on the north end. We apologize for that confusion. And I had to make it right.
Still the same though, that the north end or the south end performing better.
But thank you, and I'm going to come to you with my
except for in
chart.
science, except for in science.
Except for on science, and we think it has a lot to do with those seed standards and that change there.
But the important part is that you created a team of teachers working together
Yeah.
all year long. That is so cool.
If you see one of our 6th grade teachers, ask them how it's going, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. They're just so positive, resilient. They're an awesome group.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Thank
thanks.
you. Yeah. Okay, we'll move down to board committee reports, and on here, we just have Terry reporting the USBA Board of Directors report, but I did ask her if she would also give an update on the audit committee, and then Alan and Larry, if you would just give us a quick report on the delegates assembly.
The audit committee hosted a training on August 3rd. Sponsored a training, hosted, sponsored. The district hosted it. The Alan Allred conducted it. He taught the training for all of the high school administrators and their financial secretaries. Kathy and I were there, and Alan did a fabulous job, as usual. He reminded us this was his 3rd time doing a training, and they've all been different. Each one has been different. This time we talked about fixed assets, and also talked during the course of the meeting, because he was asking for input from all of the administrators and the financial secretaries. He got a lot more from the financial secretaries than the administrators, but he got a lot. And one thing that came out of that meeting is that they are just dying for online fee payment capabilities for students in high schools. Because all of you have had high school students and had to stand in the lines at the beginning of the year during registration to pay the fees and all that sort of thing. And right now, PowerSchool does not interact directly with Munis or Blue Bear, the bookkeeping software that the financial secretaries are using. So they have no idea when students drop classes or add classes and what fees they have and what fees they don't have. They have to print out forms. They have to actually print forms out and then manually compare and manually switch those over to Blue Bear, which is the bookkeeping software. And so they're spending a lot of time in my opinion, antiquated activities. So one of the things that came out of the training is that we're going to create a committee with the financial secretary, the high school financial secretaries, and Dale. Starting in mid-October, they're going to meet quarterly. Well, they'll start meeting in the middle of October because that's when the dust will finally settle a little from school starting, and begin the process of trying to get us to the point where the high schools will have the capability for parents to have online fee payment for their high school students' registration next year. So that committee will start meeting mid-October.
Okay, thank you. Anything to report on the USBA? Oh.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dale's been trying to figure it out himself for the last year, and that is too much for one person. So we just discussed at that training that we need a committee of the people who are going to use it, the people who have to implement the technology change, and Dale. Anyway, mid-October is when that that committee will start meeting.
Yeah, we were hoping to even include school lunch and a few other services like that, so they're all under one umbrella. Actually found that West Side School District, school district itself seems to have a great solution that's encompassing all of their services, and so it's a little embarrassing to think that they're a little funny.
I was there years ago, set them on a path.
Did you implement that?
I gave them a blueprint of how to do it.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Appreciate that. Terry's a great leader for that committee, and she's on top of things and really trying to make things be more consistent across the board for all of the high schools and middle schools and elementary, so every school isn't doing things differently. So that's been really good, and Alan is really great to work with us and help us. Do you want to say anything on the USBA Board of Directors?
The last USBA Board of Directors meeting was a shortened version, and it was the day after my surgery last week.
Okay.
So Alan, oh, you didn't go. Did you go to the meeting last week? Alan and Larry would have as much information as I would have from USBA at this point.
Okay, all right,
'Cause it was
Alan.
all about the JLC legislative priorities.
Okay, Alan and Larry.
Well, I wasn't going to be here, so I asked Larry to do this, and so I'm going to let Larry just talk about the handout that he passed.
Okay, you and the superintendent back me up, because I'm still learning a lot of this stuff. But I will tell you, Friday night, we had the Our Schools Now people, and they're very passionate. They feel that they can make this work and pass it. We then heard from the legislators. Lyle Hilliard was one of them. And they're skeptical. And one thing I got out of it Friday night was that if our schools now were to pass, the legislature would step in and take control of where that money went. It would not come to the schools as our schools now people are saying. And so that was a definite snafu in that meeting. As Saturday at the legislative priorities, the first item, fully funding the growth and all of the line items, that's a very basic one. We took the word total out of that because it sounded like that was the total for everything, and so we removed that. The second section, the 5.5 WPU increase gave us levels of being able to deal with our additional needs in staffing and services and such to do that. It also includes $5 million a year in a way of getting back some of our transportation money, which was taken away from us when things crashed. And cash would benefit from that fairly substantially if they were able to do that. And then $500,000 for the small schools that are scattered among the state that require extra funds to be able to keep their doors open. And then the third one, the first one was setting the floor, and that's the thing that's a little different approach. Instead of setting a cap, setting a floor on the basic rates, which would keep us from, if property values change and increase, it would keep us from having to lower ours, which effectively means a small tax increase if that were to happen. And the same on the capital levy floors to be in place for 5 years, which would provide some consistency and give us a better ability to be able to plan and look forward knowing that money is going to be consistent and how it's going to come. And then we struck the last item on higher education. The Our Schools Now people were really concerned and said that's the last thing they need is a food fight between public and higher education going on while they're trying to pass this. And so that was removed.
Okay.
But it was set there to explore
Right.
that possibility there.
Yeah, they'll look at it in the future.
Now, as we discuss some of these things Cash District is helped with. Some of those things Cash District will be the same there as we go through that. But Terry, please, the JLT did a marvelous job.
They
with
did.
this.
Steve participated on a subcommittee of the JLC to work on this equitable education piece, and I think they did a really great job with that. I did think of one more thing while we were sitting here. Did you, Steve, hear that Senator Stevenson's newest passion is to do away with premiums on bonds for?
I had received some information on that, yeah.
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen what he was proposing, but we got some information from our bankers and finance people saying that they were gonna mess around with with premiums, and that's just cannot happen.
He, that came out in our Cedar City JLC meeting, and, I was gonna remember to tell you that, and I forgot, but that was, everyone there, that was a big gasp when that was announced in that meeting.
What's his
The
premise
premium,
for doing that?
because he says it's money that the taxpayers didn't approve, that we're getting. So he quotes transparency laws on that, but we could
So
argue
don't the
that.
premiums come from the lending company?
Mhm.
Not
And it's
from
not-
taxpayer
There's nothing
money?
that's not transparent about it at all. We put it right out there, how
That's
much
right.
it is,
That's right.
and what we spend it on. So he's just trying to,
Well, and in my mind, it's, we are applying for an estimated sum of money that's a principal plus an interest. The way we get premiums is when the interest comes in lower than what we expected it to be, so we get extra money, but it's still the same pot, same amount of money.
it didn't cost
In
the
the end.
taxpayers.
It didn't, but anyway, so he says that's not true, and so that's his newest passion for the next session, just so you know.
Okay, well, glad we got both of you on that committee to work on it. All right, for the board president report, I took one of the items off of all of the list of items that we wanted to be trained on, and this one was how to advocate better for the district. And so what I did on this was I just put down some of the things that I think are right, and you can kind of help me if this is true, and then give us, let's just quickly brainstorm any other ideas, or you can take this home, write it in, and return it to me at the next meeting, and I will make up a sheet of things that we just have the facts on. So when people come to us and start to present a negative side, we have some information to give them the positive side. So help me if this is wrong to make corrections here. This is a rough draft. Number one, Utah is the lowest funded state for the weighted student unit, correct?
Currently, yes.
Okay,
Well, okay.
Well,
Every state
WPU
doesn't use
exist
a
in every state.
weighted student unit.
so how would you state that then?
So
But we have the least
what's a
amount
better
of
way to say that, Dale?
It's really the state of Utah spends less per student.
Yeah,
Okay,
than any other state.
okay. Could somebody take notes on this and just hand it back to me so I don't have to stop and?
I'll
write it?
tell you, if you, what I would do is just read through them, and then let us take it home, and
Okay.
Dell and I will put the correct language in any of the ones that
Okay.
need just a little clarification.
Perfect.
Then we can come back and talk about more too. But I think rather than sit here, if we know what you're trying to say, we can get
Okay.
the proper words. Yeah.
Good suggestion. Okay, number two, Cache County collects the lowest rate for property taxes in Utah.
And that needs a little
Okay.
wordsmithing too.
Cache County District ranks number one in the state on the yearly SAGE test.
That does not need any wordsmithing.
Okay. Our mission is to educate students for success in a changing world. I think we need to all know our mission statement.
Yep.
And here's a summary of our vision, is to provide a well-rounded educational learning experience for students to gain the skills necessary to achieve their personal, educational, and professional goals. The district has exceptional special education, advanced placement, career and technology, technical education, and whatever else you want to add on there that I
Okay.
didn't know about.
We'll add some there.
Students of all abilities are provided an equitable education. The district has constructed 3 new schools, 2 high schools and 1 elementary, retrofitted 2 middle schools to become elementary schools, and updated 3 additional elementary schools while maintaining fiduciary, hope I said that right, responsibility to the taxpayers by operating within the budget.
Okay.
The board, because we get a lot of comments about how wasteful we are, so I thought we should have something to kind of counteract that. The board adopts and oversees the yearly budget submitted by the business manager. The budget does not exceed allocated funds. And then, anything else?
Yeah, we can add some more to this.
I hate to feel like a deer in the headlights when people come at me
Yeah.
with things, and I just thought if anyone else is like me, you would like to have some information that you have ready to present Not that
Okay.
you're going to carry this around in your wallet or anything, but at least you'll have this, you know,
Okay.
that you can
The
use.
things that you're talking about that the school district does really well are really put in a visual format on the state of the district report that's on the website. I thought that was just awesome to
Okay.
find that when I was looking last week, when I was sending a response email to some negative feedback from a patron. And so, but that state of the district report on the website is awesome.
Okay.
It's really great.
Do you want me to look that up and add it in, or do you want to?
I would suggest all of you just look at that, and
Okay.
that might give you some ideas of what you want to put on. the
Okay.
It's a good place, it's a good, to know about it so that you can refer people to
Yeah.
it and say, hey, you should check out our state of the district report on the website. And you can see some of the great things that the district is doing.
Okay, perfect.
It's the advantage of having a PIO now, that we
Yes.
can just get things put where they need to be, that people can find them.
Will you let Jenda look at this too, so she can, and Tim,
Yep.
so they can add whatever to it? Okay, then your assignment is to bring this back with any ideas in addition to these, so I can have it for next time, okay? All right, thank you. Superintendent?
Yeah, here's a printed copy of the article that appeared in the Tribune. Our PIO office and, well, more than one of us, Mike is working also, but we did come to the decision, Mike and I, that we think in order to meet the expectation of the Division of Water Quality and have our schools tested by Labor Day, that we're just going to try and find an outside agency that will come in and test our water, and that way principals are not involved, school people are not involved, so nobody could come back and say, well, you sent the water you wanted sent, so we're
I
just
know
going
an
to.
agency that would do that.
Huh?
I know an agency that would do that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, Beaver Health Department.
Okay.
They,
Right.
they have an environmental,
There was talking to some lady there who's going to reaffirm it for today, see if they'd be willing to do it, so if you could draw it and all, that'd be good.
yeah, but they do that. They test water samples all the time.
And then the other thing is, we had about 127 new teachers in this room today. A great seasoned crop of teachers and a fresh bunch of new first years, and the day went marvelous. We are really, really running like a fine-oiled machine with our what goes on in our classroom. And so, there's not a better group that I'd rather talk to than that group of new educators and people joining us because they wanted to become part of our team. So that this place, we had a full, that was open all the way back. And our people just did a marvelous job of presenting our school district to them and getting them acclimated so that we could hit it. We've got a little bit of concern about White Pine and Cedar Ridge. Gary, do you want to kind of give just a little update? You're the last one that went today. That's some concern. The high school, you all saw it last night. There's a lot of turf to go down, but there's a lot of time to throw it down too. And there will be a football game tomorrow, and that grass is growing well on the football field, so. Gary?
This afternoon, in between some meetings and before this one, I did run up and walk through both of those schools again. Tim actually went through those schools this morning. Cedar Ridge is a little behind. There are still a couple classrooms, I believe there's 2 classrooms that do not have carpet in them yet. Paint was drying and the cabinets were going in, and then carpet would be next. Those are upper grade classrooms, so those will start on the 23rd with the rest. But they're kind of working through the weekend. They're working. The problem is tomorrow we have teachers show up for their first day, contract day. And some of those teachers will not be able to get into their room and get it ready. And you know how teachers feel about that, especially elementary teachers. And I think the younger, the more concern. But we've been guaranteed that, you know, those rooms will be ready. We can teach in those rooms come the 23rd. It may be the 22nd that they pull out last minute, which means those teachers are not going to have time to get in and do that. But we've sent out some all calls through the custodians and for sweepers, and we've got a staff ready as soon as the all call goes out if they need to come and help. I know we have church organizations that are kind of on hold waiting to help some also. As I went to White Pine today, we're down to 2 classrooms there that do not have carpet in them. One of those is the kindergarten and one of those is the preschool, both of which do not start on the 23rd. So we have just a little bit more time, maybe an extra 4 days there. Once again, we got some people ready to go in there and help as soon as we get the go-ahead. I've told those principals, if they have teachers that cannot get into their classrooms tomorrow, even though it is a contract day, to not require those teachers to come in by any means. We know those teachers are going to put the time in to get their classrooms ready, and that may be Saturday or Monday night or Tuesday night or whenever. So they will get in as soon as they can. It was interesting, I was at White Pine. Carpet went down this morning. As Tim went through, I don't think the carpet was down. I got there after lunch. Carpet was down in 2 additional first grade classrooms that didn't have carpet before. Both of those teachers were in their classroom already. I think every classroom I passed had teachers already in there. One I passed, her mom and dad were both there packing stuff out of the car, hauling it into the classroom. So those teachers are anxious to get in there, and that's causing a little bit of anxiety with our teachers, knowing that they don't have, all of them don't have that 3 days to prep for their classrooms. But ceilings should be up, walls should be up, carpet should be down, and we can teach in those classrooms. And so that's kind of where we stand, and we would still like to move forward and start same day as everyone else.
Okay, thank you. I'd be happy to help anybody who needs help move into their class.
Thank you, and we've got people in the district office that have made the same offer. We're willing to throw our gloves on and roll our sleeves up and help anybody also.
Okay, all right, thanks. Just in conclusion, I thought that the Green Canyon High open house and dedication was very well done.
Was.
And I'll go ahead and send a thank you card to Principal Swenson from the board on what an outstanding job that they did in preparing for that and presenting it.
When, as long as we're talking about buildings, can you give us an update on Cash High?
Yeah, we were just down there, what, 2 nights ago, 2 days ago? Yesterday. And chose of all the things that are critical, if you ever get down and look at Millville Elementary, there isn't a person who had anything to do with that whole project that's proud of the way the gymnasium looks on the outside. It just does not look good. So we were bound and determined not to make that same mistake.
It's a beautiful building, Superintendent.
Inside.
I've got a soft spot in my heart.
Yeah. But it, you know, I mean, from the architects to the builders to, there isn't anybody who, I mean, the idea to fix it is to paint it. And painting over block is not something that anybody would recommend, but there's lots of feelings. So we had to make sure that we didn't make the same mistake. If you go look at Sunrise, you'll see that almost the same block, but if you do some certain things with split face and just do some things that give it depth, it changes the whole thing. So we went down and we looked at a wall they'd put up for us just to see the mortar and how the block looked, and it's going to be a beautiful building. And we chose the lighter mortar, and they were absolutely, the bricklayers were just positioned all the way around waiting for the decision, and they were, Mike says, well, you'll have it done by tonight then, and but it's going well. But it'll be a year from now before we pulled some of DWA's people off on the concrete and moved them up to White Pine to get some sidewalks done up there, so that we don't have that same kind of outside look that things are not done. So that might set it back just a little bit, but it'll be fine by next year. It'll be a nice building.
Okay, thank you.
My biggest surprise last night was when I sat down on those super thick cushions
Oh, yeah.
and found I was sitting on a piece of cement.
And some of us
There's
couldn't
no
touch the
give.
floor. Those are obviously basketball player chairs.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you to everyone on the board for diligently doing your jobs and going the extra mile. The district breakfast is which morning?
Tuesday.
Tuesday morning at,
Well, we start serving at 7.
okay. So if anybody is available and wants to go to that.
What time do you want us there?
If you want to help with setup, 6:30, and if you want to man a grill or be a part, 6:30 is probably the time you'd be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Okay, I'll take a motion then for us to adjourn.
I make the motion, we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay, let's go ahead and,
Oh, I shut my computer down.
oh, do you want us to do it? Can we just do it? Okay, all in favor, say yes.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your support last night.
Did we have to vote?
How's your garden coming? Really? Can I pick some tomatoes?